Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar today ahead of our Energy Storage Spain that's happening on the 24th of October 2024. Welcome. Today we will be covering energy storage lessons from Spain and Germany with a presentation from Susan Taylor, who would also be our moderator for our panel discussion with Rosa Milano and Patricia Rubio. Thank you. So a little bit about Solarplaza. Our mission is to positively impact the world by accelerating the sustainable energy transition. Solarplaza was established in 2004 and we are currently celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. We are based in Netherlands, Rotterdam, and currently we have organized 200 plus events in 47 plus countries worldwide with an impressive 60,000 plus solar PV professionals. And today, luckily, we are sharing a discount code for our upcoming conference in Spain, Energy Storage. Stay ahead at the end of the webinar. We will be sharing this after the presentation as well as the panel discussion. There is a question box on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Please use this Q&A and chat box to ask any questions throughout the presentation as well as throughout our panel discussion. It will be reviewed and answered by our panelists. If you are experiencing any technical issues, please also use the Q&A chat box and we will address them and try and facilitate this as best as possible. The presentation slides that you receive, that we will view today, as well as the recording, will be available between 24 to 48 hours post-webinar. Thank you. And remember to stay tuned to the end of the webinar. We will be sharing the discount code with all registered attendees. Thank you. And as previously mentioned, the flow of the discussion will be a presentation, a panel discussion, followed by a Q&A. And our first presenter is Susan Taylor, who would be the moderator of the panel, but she's also a senior analyst for batteries and energy storage at S&P Global. Thank you very much. Over to you, Susan.
Great. Thanks a lot, Marco. Thank you for the introduction and good afternoon, good morning, everyone. So today I would like to share with you really just some of the key trends that we're seeing impacting energy storage markets in Europe currently, and how that trickles down and impacts obviously the German and the Spanish markets. So I'll give an overview of those two markets, overall trends, and then I think it will really get into the details when we dive into the panel discussion with our experts who are actually on the ground in these markets. So what has been happening globally that is obviously impacting storage markets in Europe? So I think just starting with some context is always important to just set the scene. Europe has been installing wind and solar generation since around 2012. So for over a decade, we've been installing wind and solar generation. So if we look at the chart here, in 2024, the total installed capacity of wind and solar is around 700 gigawatts. So that's today. If we fast forward to 2030, so what that's going to look like, we're expecting almost 1.5 terawatts of wind and solar generation capacity installed in Europe by 2030. So that's more than double what we have installed today in less than half the time. So we're really ramping up that renewable deployment. And of course, this comes with massive challenges to the energy system. The impacts of intermittent renewables in our energy system are already being seen, particularly in markets like Spain, for example, we'll see a bit later, and Germany, where you have high shares of renewable energy in the energy system. And one of the most notable trends, I would say, and we've seen a lot about in the news in 2024, is around the impact of wind and solar generation on electricity prices. So we've seen extremely volatile electricity prices in the wholesale market. And this is really only going to continue across more markets in Europe as we deploy more and more renewables. So I think the main point here is the fact that we're seeing these impacts on the electricity system is a real direct reflection of the fact that we don't have enough flexibility in the energy system to address this. Storage is really lagging behind renewable deployment, and it needs to catch up pretty quickly if we want to address this by 2030. The good news, though, is that we're starting to see increasing levels of support for energy storage in different countries in Europe, driven mainly from the front meter perspective by direct procurements. So that's what we're showing on this map here. So just for example, probably one of the more well-known support schemes is capacity markets, which are well established already in Belgium, the UK, Italy, and more recently in Poland. These are open to storage, offering long-term contracted revenues, which is obviously great for investment in storage. There are discussions of capacity markets actually in both Spain and Germany at the moment. Another type of procurement, which I expect to see more of, but Italy seems to be leading the way here, is these TSO-Led procurements. So more of a top-down approach to procuring energy storage based on the system needs as dictated by the TSO. The reason I expect to see more of these types of procurements is that it's mandated in the EU electricity market design that all member states will have to assess their flexibility needs and really essentially define an energy storage target from 2026 onwards. And finally, we're also seeing a lot more emerging markets. So if we look at more the Central Eastern Europe side, so in here in red, that are using EU funding to kickstart direct storage procurements that support renewable uptake. Beyond just direct procurements that we're seeing at the utility scale, the business case for battery energy storage globally and of course in Europe is being massively improved. I think this topic is not new to anyone who follows the industry closely. It's been talked about a lot this year, the massive price declines we've seen in system prices over the past year. The reason for this is really due to a number of factors all compounding. So firstly, we have falling raw material costs. We've seen innovation really driving more and more energy dense products, which drives down the cost on a per kilowatt hour basis. We've also seen significant oversupply, overcrowding of suppliers in the energy storage system space, particularly in China, very fierce competition, and that is leading to increasingly competitive prices. So all of these factors together have really compounded to drive down the installed energy storage cost by almost 40% in 2025 compared to a system installed in 2022. And the hardware itself, the innovation is really driving down system prices even more as a percentage. So really quite a significant cost decline just in the next, from 22 to 2025, improving the business case for storage. So I think these three trends are, of course, impacting markets across Europe, and they will impact both Germany and Spain. So a fundamental need for more flexibility, so more energy storage, is being recognized across a number of countries where we see direct procurements at the utility scale for energy storage. And finally, that the energy storage industry as a whole is really reaching maturity, prices are falling, and the business case for energy storage is significantly improving. Now, just taking a closer look at energy storage at the utility scale in Germany. This is the largest electricity market in Europe. It's attracting really a lot of attention from energy storage investors. It has a very supportive market environment and, I think importantly, very attractive merchant revenue stack in the country. So there's a lot that other markets can learn from Germany. Just looking in terms of the policy support landscape, I think this has really gained a lot of momentum over the past year. One of the notable advancements is the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs presented its energy storage strategy, and this really put storage on the political map for the first time in Germany, with some of the main goals to really address long-standing barriers for storage and really highlight that it's a cost-effective option for increasing flexibility and integrating renewables. We've also seen in 2024 changes to grid charging for co-located assets in Germany that can switch in and out of this EEG funding feed-in tariffs. I think this is mainly focused on behind-the-meter assets, unfortunately, because this is still a long-standing issue for co-located assets and the innovation tenders, which I'll talk a bit more about in the next slide. Grid fee exemption, this was extended out to 2029. Well, this is good. I think the hope, well, ideally this should just be an indefinite extension. And finally, as I mentioned already, Germany is also planning to launch a technology neutral capacity market by 2028. Still not entirely clear how this might impact battery storage. We've seen recent announcements around subsidies for hydrogen gas plants, which could be a huge disincentive for other technologies wanting to participate. So there's still a lot of clarity still needed there, but an additional revenue stream is always a good thing for the revenue stack for a battery system. So just, I missed a slide there, sorry. So beyond just the policy support, sorry, I need to go back. But beyond just policy support in Germany, the utility scale segment is really split into three types of storage assets that we find at the front of the meter. So the first type is co-located storage assets, supported mainly by innovation tenders, and that's what I'm showing in this chart on the left-hand side. To date, the innovation tenders have awarded renewables co-located with storage around 2.5 gigawatts total assets, and of that, around 600 megawatts comes from battery energy storage. As I just mentioned, because the innovation tender rules don't allow storage to charge from the grid, this really dampens the business case for storage because it can't participate in some of the other lucrative markets, ancillary markets and such. The second sort of segment for front of the meter are grid boosters. So this is a TSO-led program that aims to stabilize the grid, lower system costs, using storage as a transmission asset. So essentially avoiding having to build transmission lines where cost effective. Under this program, there are around 450 megawatts of batteries under construction and an additional 500 megawatts in planning. And finally, in the standalone segment, and probably one of the most exciting or attractive aspects about Germany for batteries is the merchant standalone market. Batteries have access to a number of different revenue streams in the ancillary service markets, from FCR to the secondary reserve, as well as energy arbitrage, so really taking advantage of those price spreads on the day-ahead and intraday markets. So these factors, all combined, are really driving the storage outlook in Germany out to 2030. Germany is forecast to be the largest market in Europe in our current forecast, and we expect around 19 gigawatts of storage to be installed by 2030. If you look at the green bars in the chart here, that signifies the standalone assets. So it's really going to be driven mainly by standalone assets, unless something quite dramatic changes in the innovation tenders and the business case makes more sense for co-located storage. Moving on now to Spain, let's get an overview of what's happening in the Spanish market. There's been a lot in the news around negative electricity prices. A record number of negative electricity prices, in fact, have been recorded in Spain in 2024. This is really a direct result of the massive PV build-out in the country, as well as a relatively poorly connected to the rest of Europe compared to other countries in Europe. So looking at the chart here on the left-hand side, it's showing the total installed generation capacity in Spain. And what we see is that the yellow line, which is your solar PV, this is really rapidly outpacing other generation technologies. And by 2030, it's definitely dominating the electricity mix. The impact of this PV build out, well, on the electricity prices, as I've already mentioned, we've seen second chart, a rapid jump from 2023 to 2024. We see a lot more negative electricity price hours recorded, low or negative. Just noting that below 5 euros per megawatt hour would be the lowest, and then we see highs or peak prices greater than 150 euros per megawatt hour. So massive volatility in the electricity prices in Spain. So of course, on the one hand, if we look at this from the PV developer perspective, this creates quite some challenges around profitability of projects, especially because PV is generating and selling when prices are very low. On the other hand, from the storage perspective, this really looks like quite a good opportunity to actually maximize that energy arbitrage. So charging when prices are low or negative, and then discharging when prices are high again. There really is a fundamental need for storage quite clearly in Spain to address this issue. So what does the market look like today? Well, to date, Spain's utility storage market has been relatively slow to kick off. I think one of the main reasons is typically noted around no long-term contracted revenues to really support that initial business case investment. This could be changing, however. We see Spain has set really ambitious energy storage target of 22 gigawatts by 2030. This includes both pumped hydro and thermal solar PV plants. Spain has also recently introduced funding for energy storage to the PERTE program for both co-located and standalone assets. So co-located assets, we saw the first auction already in December 2023, 150 million euros in funding, and we saw around 36 projects awarded, so 900 megawatts to our battery system projects were awarded in that first tender. The second auction is expected for standalone assets. It should take place in 2024. Again, I think there's been some delays. We're waiting for the final auction date and expecting to procure around 600 megawatts of battery systems standalone under the subsidy. There's also plans in Spain to auction around 829 megawatts of renewable plus energy storage capacity. So it doesn't define just how much storage is part of that total, but targeting regions affected by coal plant closures. So two regions in particular, Galicia and Asturias, and this scheme is currently under consultation. And finally, as I mentioned already, that the capacity markets are being under discussion in both Germany and Spain. In Spain, this has really been under discussion for quite a while. There have been a lot of delays and a lot of uncertainty, but it's really seen as a necessary step to boost that investment, that initial investment in storage projects by providing these long-term contracted revenues. So we've seen a lot of positive steps happening in Spain over the past year or so. Within our outlook here, the near-term outlook is really driven by those tenders, those auctions that we've seen. So the PERTE tender out till about 2027, 28. And then longer term, I think there is definitely a fundamental case or an opportunity here for co-location with storage. Of course, it depends how the market conditions evolve and how risky investors see that in the long term and how things change with regards to introduction of the capacity market. So I think I will leave it there. That's just really an overview, key trends, what's happening in both Spain and Germany. I think it's a good place to leave it, and maybe we can move over to the panel discussion and get into some more of the details around both of these markets. I think so. We're joined today by two panelists who are working on the ground, and I'll let both of them introduce themselves and a little bit about their company before we get started with the discussion. So maybe, Rosa, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, absolutely. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. My name is Rosa Milano. I am a sales director in Fluence, covering growing markets. My team is especially focusing on supporting what will be the largest energy storage market in the future in Europe, meaning South Europe and Eastern Europe, but happy also to contribute about Germany today. Influence, for the one that don't know us, we are an energy storage solution provider. So we provide battery energy storage system solution and long-term service agreement for our customer globally. We have more than 20 gigawatt hour of battery energy storage installed in the last 10 years, more than 5 gigawatt already under service and performance guarantees regime. And Fluence also operate in the optimization software like Mosaic and the renewable asset management platform called Nispera. Very happy to be here and looking forward to this panel discussion.
Great, thanks, Rosa. And Patricia?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Patricia Oliveros. I'm head of operations and responsible for the developments in Circle Energy. And Circle Energy is a service provider for the development, for project development in Spain. We develop PV, wind, storage, and hydrogen projects. And we have internal engineering and also internal land management team. We also work with big companies throughout the sector in their hybridizations, incorporating PV, wind, or storage. And also at the end of this year, we're going to finalize our internationalization to Mexico, also for development, for project development.
Great, thank you both. And I think since we kind of ended off with Spain, maybe it's a good place to start. And I think Patricia, as you just mentioned, developer on the ground in Spain. Could you give us sort of an overview of the situation with interconnections in Spain? So it's definitely been, I think, one of the limiting factors that's been impacting the massive curtailment, because Spain can't really export as much as other countries in Europe that are better connected. Is there anything that you could kind of share about the massive build out of renewables and what the plans are in Spain for addressing this around interconnections?
Yes, thank you, Susan. So to integrate the growing amount of renewable energy, the system has to use all the available sources of flexibility. So on the side of the grid, we have to put special attention to interconnections with the rest of Europe, because of the characteristics that Spain has of resource and space. We have a privileged situation to feed the rest of Europe with renewable energy, also making it suitable with our historical position as a farmer and livestock country. The balance in 2023 was exporter every month of the year, and the percentage of exports in relation with the total generation was at 10%. However, as you said, Susan, maybe this cannot be optimal for countries like Spain because of its geographical situation and its electrical mix. On the other side, the incorporation of storage into the system also reduces the investments that the grid operators have to make in their infrastructures. So, and it would also allow higher percentage of energy consumed to come from renewable sources. Generation in Spain is going to keep growing with a few temporal priority projects that are arising, and also with the tenders that have been planned for more than 3 years. The ministry has published like 3 months ago, like a call of interest. So we hope to locate the most demanded nodes and to call those tenders. We don't have any more news on this. And finally, for you to have an overview of the power of the capacity in Spain, in the transmission network, we have 40% of substations intended for tenders. That is equivalent to a 70% of the capacity of the grid. And we just have a 3% of the substations immediately accessible that would be equivalent just to 1% of the capacity on the transmission network. And finally, as for the distribution network, we have around 20% of substations with margin. However, many of them are also blocked because of their affections to the transmission network.
Okay, so I understand obviously interconnections is definitely part of the problem, but it's only, part of the solution as well. And you mentioned there as well the energy storage tenders, which I also covered just very briefly, the PERTE tenders. I wonder, maybe Rosa, how, from a system integrator perspective, how Fluence is responding to these developments and how you're viewing these tenders in Spain.
Yeah, thanks for this question. So the subsidy scheme called PERTE in Spain is, in our view, and honestly in my view, as Rosa Milano, setting the ground for the energy storage growth in Spain for several reasons. First of all, this system is exploring the energy storage usage both as a co-located and hybrid system. That is the PERTE 1, so the 904 megawatt that you mentioned about in your presentation, which is in support of renewable growth, but also the second round of the PERTE result that at this stage are not available yet, will be for standalone application into a 4-hour type of system. So it's really covering the wide range of application for battery storage. But more importantly, the reason why I'm saying is setting the future of a battery energy storage market is because the scoring mechanism under the PERTE is focusing a lot on the grid forming abilities. And for grid forming, I talk about inertia, black start, power oscillation damping, is also focusing on the importance of the supply chain on the local economy. So what is the local content? How can we support the growth in Spain? And also stressing a lot on the environmental and sustainability aspect, which are extremely, again, important nowadays and on which we need to grow. As a company and Fluence as a system integrator, of course, when we have a new market that we are facing, we need to adapt to that new market to respond to the needs. So with regards to grid forming, Fluence has already extensive experience in grid forming abilities from black start, inertia, and POD in market like Australia, UK, and Germany. So we are offering our proven software and technology on this point of view, but also we are assessing internally how we can adapt the value proposition to incentivize or promote more local content and to provide full transparency to our customer when it comes to traceability. So about the raw material, all the data that our potential customer and future customer in Spain will need to actually comply with all the subsidy scheme, because of course, being a subsidy, everything has also been reported to actually get that funding back. So this is the way we are working. And just as a closing remark, this is a subsidy scheme on which other new market that you also mentioned can learn about to explore ways of implementing storage.
Great, thank you. And I think you definitely touched on an important point. There is quite a differentiating factor in the way that these auctions are going around their selection criteria. And I wonder if that's something we might see more and more of in other auctions, especially around ESG. So yeah, you mentioned these auctions sort of kickstarting the market. I think it's also important to understand just the foundations of what the regulations for storage look like currently in Spain. So if you're a developer in Spain looking to install a storage project, what are some of the most important regulations that you need to know about? I think, Patricia, maybe you could add some color to that.
Yes, thank you for the question, because it's a very controversial one. Taking into account that the storage is the enabling element for the integration of renewable energies into the system, we see a slow regulation development that is generating uncertainties and blockages in the access to the grid, and also in the future operation of the storage. On the one side, as for the grid, there are guidelines that are being developed to categorize consumptions into profiles or patterns. so that standalone projects can have more positive and agile permits. So nowadays we are seeing many projects that are left outside without permits because of a saturation of a specific element on the grid. So we can see restrictions of 2, 5, 8% of the annual hours where the saturation takes place. So it's a very short time. So these patterns pursue to be a transitional exit that is pretended to be approved at the end of this year. In the allegations to the proposal, the Spanish associations alleged that we need them to be a solution to evaluate the access permits, but not to limit the future operation of the storage, because these patterns are based on the most likely behavior of a battery. So there will be exceptions that do not comply with this pattern, but are still equally valid. So the future answer of the grid operators should be, I give you the access and connection permit, but take into account that in a 10% of the annual time, I can cut your asset off to maintain the security of the grid. So that's okay, and that is the end of the past, because the final objective, according to the conversations that several associations had with the CNMC and with the distributors, is that in 2 years' time, this transitional period must have ended, and certain tools have to be developed to allow total flexibility in battery operation. So the objective for the battery is to have the interconnection point available all day long, as to have all other existing technologies nowadays. And finally, and with this I end, they also have an interest in controlling demand speculation. With the Royal Decree Law 8/2023, they have set an entry barrier to consumptions connected to a more than 36 kilovolts, with the introduction of an additional warranty of 20 euros per kilowatt. So in addition, in case a transmission node has a lot of consumption requests, they will evaluate if they call the node for a tender to control their entrance into the system.
Okay, so I mean, I just compare that to, say, the market in maybe Germany, for example. It does seem to be there's a lot more complexities, and as you have already mentioned, a lot of delays in some of these regulations. So I can imagine then, from maybe an investor perspective, that this could be seen as quite risky. I wonder, from a revenue stack perspective, what that kind of looks like in Spain at the moment. We've seen that there's these support through the tenders, but in terms of revenue stacking, how does that look? Either of you, maybe Rosa, if you want to have anything to add to that. Are there ancillary markets open to storage like they are for Germany, or?
Yeah, exactly. So definitely there is possibility of revenue stacking in Spain, but there are significant gap. Okay, so one of the main application will be arbitrage, not to take advantage of the price volatility, but from an investment perspective, is a merchant revenue is not enough. And on the ancillary service side, yes, storage can provide reserves or frequency regulation, but Spain, as other countries across Europe, have suffered the saturation of this market. Just in 2021, the ancillary services were counting like the 70% of the business case, while nowadays is less than the 50%. And in addition to this, compared to other markets, we don't have market, so ancillary service depth in Spain, because the remuneration scheme, so the payment mechanism on this is not elaborated and revised like it can be in UK, in Germany, or in other more solid market. So having said that, of course, there is the strong need for Spain to look at additional revenue stream. Once you already mentioned is the capacity market, that of course will provide a long bankable revenue stream. But honestly, there is another big portion that can become a revenue stream, and it is expanding on the advanced ancillary services, a little bit like UK have done on the stability pathfinder. No, nowadays with a lot of renewable, we need of inertia, we need voltage contribution, and we cannot longer count on synchronous generation to do these activities. So storage is one of the most suitable technology to do this. So creating a remuneration scheme, a product to provide this service can definitely support so additional revenue stack into Spain.
Okay, understood. The merchant revenue, while it looks attractive, we can see these nice spreads, it's just too risky and not enough to really get that investor confidence. Yeah, yeah.
Unless a subsidy supporting, of course, like the PERTE.
Yeah. I wonder if, Patricia, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, so the natural character of a battery is to work on the ancillary services. So I connect or disconnect whenever the system needs. However, these ancillary services are not yet regulated, and the only thing that the battery has to generate a base of revenues is the arbitrage in the day-ahead and intraday markets. It's true that operational procedures are being reformed so that the batteries can apply for these ancillary services. However, the profit that each project can achieve will strongly depend on the aggressiveness on the strategy of operation and the expertise and know-how of the battery operator. The spread we saw in 2015, 2020 was like 15-25 euros per megawatt hour. However, as more renewables are being incorporated into the system, the spread gets higher. So in 2023, the average spread was around 70 euros per megawatt hour. So to sum up, in these first years, we're going to see revenues coming from the arbitrage with a very good spread and a simultaneous participation in the ancillary services, so that the players that enter promptly into the market will see higher profits and more reduced payback periods.
Great. I think I would definitely agree with you that the first movers in that market will definitely be able to capture a lot of that value from the get-go. Okay, we've spoken quite a bit now about Spain. I think we understand a bit more detail about the tenders really driving storage uptake in the near term, some of the complexities around regulation that still need to be clarified, and really I think that the merchant case just isn't enough. We need some sort of contracted revenue to really support storage beyond maybe even just tenders if it was from a market perspective. So maybe let's move over to Germany, which I think in a way is an anomaly that there are no long-term contracted revenues in this market, yet it is forecast, at least for us as well, to be the top market in Europe. So there's a lot of support that's shown around policy, the revenue stacking and access to different markets seems to be very attractive. I don't know, Rosa, if you could maybe shed a bit more light on why you think that Germany is such an attractive market at the moment in terms of the revenue stack and other.
Yes, absolutely. So as you already mentioned in your presentation, Germany is already one of the leading market for battery energy storage and will even further grow. At home, for the home application is already the market leader. And something to mention about storage is that the first energy storage project in Germany started in 2014. So bringing here already almost 10 years of experience into the market. However, having said that, so the first project we're doing FCR. After that, so project were between 10 megawatt, 25 megawatts, so still into the small scale for utility-based storage. Is only after 2023 that we start to see in Germany project above 100 megawatt and even larger than that. And from a revenue stack perspective, in my view, there are the perfect ingredient. First of all, the arbitrage opportunity is more lucrative in Germany because due to the quantity of renewable into the grid, the price spread and volatility help to generate better arbitrage revenue. And even the ancillary services, the battery works smoothly into the FCR and to the automatic frequency restoration reserve as well. Going back to the revenue stream into the Black Start, this year in January, Germany also launched the Black Start and inertia tender. So as I was mentioning, it's moving towards this advanced type of application. Then there is the innovation auction. But there is something on the ground, which is the policy and the targets that Germany have for battery energy storage and renewable. They want to achieve 80% by 2030, and they have a policy, so a strategy for storage that is supporting all of this. And coming back to the experience in the market, let's not forget about the grid booster, because Germany is also using storage for congestion management, which is bringing a lot of expertise, knowledge, and understanding of this technology and how it can better fit into the policy and into the targets.
Yeah, I think that you just hit the nail on the head there, that Germany really is an established market. It's got the projects on the ground, it's got a track record. So while it doesn't maybe have, that long-term contracted revenues yet, it may still come with the capacity market, it's got that solid track record, which obviously improves investor confidence, and it's got really supportive market structures. You just touched on another point that I divided the utility scale market in Germany into three sort of segments, and the one was the grid boosters. I think this is a really interesting concept because we don't see it maybe in some other countries coming up, but Germany is definitely at the forefront with these grid boosters, and I know Fluence is involved with this. Can you maybe tell us a bit about these projects that you have? I think they're under construction at the moment, and how you see the grid booster outlook going forward. I mean, I think currently in the plan there's another 500 megawatts. Is there any more information you can share on this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can also give you a little bit of even of more type of project that has been developed in Germany. So definitely, I have to say that for Fluence, Germany is indeed one of the primary market. So far, we have 3 offices dislocated across Germany, a very large footprint, and also a center of competence. We have our research and development lab in Erlangen, where we do all our controls activities. With our contribution to the German market, of course, the most notorious project is the grid booster. One of the grid booster, for example, is for Transnet 250 megawatt hour is 1 hour application that we are building on a full EPC, so turnkey type of solution. And these projects are addressing the major bottleneck of Germany of congestion, where we have renewable produced in the north and the load center in the south. So as you also mentioned in your presentation here, the storage is acting as a virtual transmission line, so avoiding the need to build additional transmission line for security reason, and the storage is the backup to the transmission line. This means that it is also treated as a critical infrastructure, and as such, from a contract or performance or even technical specification standpoint, is extremely more complex compared to a co-located project, for example, because it has to run on very high viability level, so above 99%. So basically, it has to be available at all time as a transmission line, has deep level of redundancy, and also have strong advanced functionality. So the inertia, all the inertia black start grid forming contribution that he has to provide. So it's extremely technical from that standpoint. And then, so we are building other, and we are following this segment. We have even a product line called UltraStack that is especially suitable for storage as transmission line for the TSO segment. However, having said that, I just want to give you another 2 examples, because, for example, Fluence has also contributed in a project that are merchant, okay, so mainly merchant. Like, for example, we've done a project 100 megawatt, 200 megawatt hour called Bunzidel that is running exactly on arbitrage and ancillary services, and is standing up, okay, without any other extra subsidy-driven contribution. And then also as part of the innovation option, okay, so there are projects that are a little bit more smaller, like 11 megawatt, 34 megawatt hour, which is a PV co-located on a 3-hour basis that is basically doing peak shifting on a 20-year contract that our customer got out of the innovation auction. So also from an experience perspective, this is reflecting that storage in Germany can really run on multiple applications. We have 1 hour with the grid booster, 2 hour on a more merchant basis, and 3 hour plus with co-located PV. Okay, and these are just 3 examples out of a footprint of project that has been installed. I think Germany has 1.3 gigawatt of storage generally installed as of today.
Great. I think that was a good overview and really insight into actual projects across those different segments. So that's great. I think, Germany sounds, there's no contracted revenues as we've mentioned, but the business case seems to stand up. Are there any challenges? And I think maybe just to both of you before we start taking some audience questions, what are the challenges so in Germany, and what can maybe Spain learn from Germany? What does Spain need to improve to get to the same point where storage is a lot more market driven and not just supported maybe by tenders? Maybe we start with you, Patricia, some of the challenges in Spain then.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So I talked before about the consumption profiles. So the application of a fixed pattern to the operation of a flexible technology is not understandable, neither from the side of the bankability nor from the side of the system needs. So for a start, the key challenges would be to approve this transitional period so that the access and connection permits stop to be the reason of the blockages because of the lack of consumption. And as some associations asked for, to propose a milestone calendar so that in 2 years' time we can have the definite regulation. In addition, we can find another bottleneck because nowadays the consumption capacity is not public, so that the developers will go blind to these applications. We base our studies in internal assumptions that can be more or less accurate and can resemble more or less to the reality. So I would say to go on with this transitional period, to work on the definite regulation, publishing the consumption capacity, and also advancing and publishing the demand tender basis.
Okay, so definitely some transparency and working on the regulations from Spain's side. And then maybe Germany, just 1 minute. Rosa, what are some of the challenges? We've heard all the good things about Germany, but where is there still room for improvement for storage?
So, I mean, if we want to even compare the two markets, so a lot of activity should be done on the market depth and framework, especially for Spain, because on Germany, yes, they are moving. They have even the energy storage, let's say, strategy, even though the first round still needs some additional information like targets and clearly explaining the role of the storage. In Spain, we don't have that yet. Okay, so really we need that as a strong fundamental to push towards the technology. Then also assessing storage as congestion management. I know that this was also one of the feedback after the energy storage strategy in Germany, and Spain needs to assess this too, because even though at the moment the congestion management is less severe in Spain compared to Germany, with the increase of renewable penetration at a certain point this problem will come. Okay, and also as you mentioned on the coal retirement plan that Spain have, so this will be one of the topic to address. And then expanding on the ancillary services. So we really need to have battery energy storage that can perform a big variety of services, and moving storage in addition to do arbitrage, but also to do some of the functionalities that that synchronous machine has been doing so far, will definitely support expanding into overcoming some of the challenges mainly related to the application and the revenue stack.
Very good. I think I've seen a number of questions come up, and one of them is quite related to what we've been discussing. We've heard a lot about energy arbitrage making up, I guess, the majority or a big part at least of the revenue stack. And you'd mentioned earlier, Rosa, about how you have projects that are 1 hour duration, 2 hour, and even 3 hour. How do you think, if energy arbitrage is going to make up the majority of the revenue stack, that the system duration will evolve? Do you think 4-hour systems will become the norm? I can at least say from our perspective, we definitely forecast longer duration systems by the end of the decade.
Okay, so this is an important question, and advice when thinking about battery energy storage, the idea is there are two main issues. Okay, one thing, what revenue stream you can do now, and maybe you have to size on that, but is also what revenue stream we can do in the future. And here we have a great data point, even though Spain maybe is not yet there, but we have the data point from UK, from other markets. For example, doing arbitrage and ancillary services, a 1 hour, 2 hour type of battery will be enough. But as the capacity market is popping up, like in Poland, we need a 4 hour type of application. So, or maybe in Italy, that there is a lot of discussion around Maxa, that is a new mechanism. It's a 8 hour type of application being considered. And at the same time, I was also talking about the grid forming abilities. Grid forming abilities, not all the technology are grid forming. So enabling that means that maybe we need to equip nowadays an energy storage system that can do grid forming, so to unlock additional revenue stream in the future. So the soft spot for battery energy storage on an arbitrage, okay, or ancillary service case will be into a 2 hour, like the example I brought it from Germany. But we strongly advise when designing the system to always look ahead. And Susan, you mentioned something about the battery price declining recently, and this is even, an incentive, okay, so to think to extra capacity to actually unlock future revenue stream in the future.
Right, so I think definitely future proofing for future revenue streams, and that's definitely helped by the fact that prices are falling. So maybe a 4-hour system is definitely profitable come the end of the decade.
Yeah,
I would definitely agree with you. I've seen one more. I think we have time for one more question for you, Patricia, that's just come in. Apart from the tender in Spain, do you see that hybridized projects, so PV co-located with storage, have a better chance, or maybe would be more profitable than standalone storage in Spain? I think maybe this is really around what we've been speaking in terms of revenue streams and certainty. So I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Yes, sure. So in case of the PV assets, their hours of production are the central hours of the day, and it's precisely here where we can see cannibalization of prices. So the incorporation of a battery into the asset would make it more profitable, allowing it to accumulate energy in those low price hours and to inject it back to capture higher prices. And also it will allow to flatten the price curves, avoiding the entrance of other technologies with higher marginal prices. And this leads us to the reflection of what strategy to follow if I want to advertise my asset. So here we would have two options. I could charge my battery from my asset so that I would be limited in the central hours of the day, but my asset won't be manageable. Or I could charge my battery from the asset and from the grid so that my asset is manageable, but I can operate all day long.
I think that, that definitely agree with that, and this has definitely been a hot topic even internally within our team around storage actually improving profitability of PV projects with what's happening with negative prices, cannibalizing prices also for the PPAs, PV PPAs. So I definitely think this is a space to watch. But we've also highlighted a number of challenges around the revenues, markets available to storage, in particular some of the regulation which is lagging and needs to be finalized. And I think from the Germany perspective, we've definitely defined that this is the top market in Europe, very attractive from a market point of view, merchant market point of view, policy perspective, definitely catching up and starting to align and putting storage on the map in Germany. I think I'm just looking at the time that I think we'll wrap it up there. And if there are any questions, I'm sure we're able to follow up after the webinar. But I'd like to thank both of our panelists. It was a really good discussion. I also learned a lot, very valuable. And I will hand over back to you, Marco. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you very much for the presentation and a comprehensive panel discussion for our insights between the storage markets of Germany and Spain. And yeah, thank you very much, everybody. I will move over to the discount code for Storage Spain on the 24th of October. And we'll leave that on the screen for a few more minutes for everybody to take that down. Please use this code when redeeming your tickets to get your discount. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And as previously mentioned, the webinar as well as the slides will be available between 24 to 48 hours after the webinar. We will forward some of those questions through to our panelists to answer directly if required. And yeah, please be at the conference on the 24th for any further information that you might require, any panel discussions or presentations that you're looking forward to seeing, hearing, and any particular topics within our conference and program. Thank you very much. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Susan, for moderating and presenting. And thank you, everybody, for attending our webinar today on behalf of Solarplaza. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.